Good morning, everybody. MG here. MG Covers, bringing you a brand new handicapping video. Title of today's video is a very simple way to create a stat model. I get tons of emails, DMs about how to create a stat model, and I'm going to give you basically what I would consider a simple way to do it. And this is also like step one. A lot of people are just lost. They don't know which direction to go. How do I do this? I'm going to show you a very easy way to get started and building your own sports betting stat model. Before we dive into that, don't forget, as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Had a lot of growth this past month, the most growth I've ever had on the channel, and I greatly appreciate that. Everybody chiming in, a lot of interaction, asking questions. I love that and love giving back to the community and sharing my knowledge with you guys. If you want to follow me on all the social media outlets, it's MG Covers, Covers spelled with a Z. It's on Instagram and Twitter. So let's dive into it. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see people when they're trying to create a stat model, a client just sent me one of their stat models to look at. The biggest mistake they make is they put too many stats into it. And if you got 5 or 6, 7 stats in a model, what happens is you have stats on top of stats on top of stats to the point where no stat is effective. You basically dilute everything, so it's not really an effective model. Now, here's one of the secrets. I have actually created models this way. This is how I created the NFL model. I had a student, we just created a UFC model for him. This is pretty much the way we did it. Go look at let's just take college basketball, for example. Go look at all the box scores yesterday in college basketball. Look at the teams that won and covered, or you could just start with teams that won. What is the 1 or 2 stats that you notice outside of the score, obviously, that was the difference in that game? So if you notice a trend like, hey, this team, I don't want to give it away, but whatever, my model, because I was getting ready to do that, whatever, what stat do you notice that the team that wins is better at than their opponent? Okay. And let's say you look at 20, 30 games and you notice that stat. Okay, write that stat down, whatever it is. Now, here's step 2. And this is very simple, and it's a great way to get started. And you can always tweak this later. So you have that one stat. You look at it, and you look at all the box scores, and you say, hey, these teams that win often also win this particular stat. Okay. Then, for like today's games, you take that stat that you have and find the team, and then whatever that stat is, average their last 5 games using just that stat. Do the same for their opponent who has the higher number. Well, there you go. That's your model, and that's the team that would cover. And again, of course, you would test this and and tweak it from there. And maybe that stat doesn't work. You go back to the drawing board, or maybe it needs one other stat. I'll give you a prime example of how I helped my client create his UFC model. We went back and looked at all the great fighters in UFC. What did they do better than their opponent? We're looking for a stat that stood out, that they did better than their opponent, that caused them to win. I don't know a lot about UFC. But what was that one stat that caused them to be better than their opponent? And we actually found it, and it was pretty effective. He had some great results early on after, I think, 2 matches, actually in the positive. And then the next step, he found something else and tweaked it, because he found where, hey, in this situation, even though that fighter won the stat that we had selected, here's something else that happened. So he made a tweak to it. And I've done that in a lot of my models as well. So, that's part of the process. So sort of reviewing this, look at the box scores. You can do it for NFL. You can do it for any sport. What do you see in that box score that the opponent that won does better than their opponent? Then take that one stat for the next game and say, add it, get an average. So if it's, the last 5 games, add up that stat, divide it by 5. That's that team's number. Do that for their opponent, and boom, you have a basic model. That's a great way to start. And then, of course, you have to learn to take that number and convert it into a number, or convert it into a money line, which is a little bit more complex. And I do teach that as well. But hopefully that kind of helps and gives you a great way to start. So I think so many times, again, the biggest mistake people make is they just put too many stats in their model, and it dilutes the effectiveness. And more times than not, there's one or two stats that stands out, and usually it's a stat that the general public doesn't notice. Just like I've talked about in college basketball, teams, the public way overvalues teams that score a lot of points, and that's generally not the correct way to do it. Could be it's a part of it. Teams that score a lot of points obviously are going to win, but it's not the best stat to use by itself. So hopefully that video helps. I'm going to show you something from yesterday. This was my model from college basketball. And again, this is a really good model. Eastern Kentucky, Morehead State. We had Morehead State -4. They were basically, I think, 8-point. Were they 8-point dogs? I can't remember. They won outright on the money line, or maybe they were. I think they were like +4, maybe. But anyway, they won outright. Marquette, Creighton was an 8-point favorite. Marquette won that outright. Our power rankings had that. Had Marquette as the winner, and you can see here, I did have a few clients play that one on the money line, and it cashed at +315. So that's sort of the end result. If you do create a model, you'll be able to find a ton of value, because more times than not, it'll be something that the general public will overlook. If you'd like to be a client and have access to all of my power rankings for all sports, in essence, what you get is all my lines for all sports. That includes NFL, college football, soccer, college basketball. You also get access to all of my coaching videos on the website. You can DM me anytime, and for the most part, I'll get back with you in a few days. Sometimes right away I can answer that question. If you want access to coaching and all of my plays for all sports, that's $49 a month. That includes everything I just mentioned, and also all of my plays for all sports. And then finally, if you want to get access to everything for a solid year, it's $249 for the entire year. That's excellent value. I kind of model my business like Netflix. I want the consumer to feel like they're getting a ton of value, but not paying a whole lot for that value. $249 for the entire year gets you everything. If you paid that monthly, that would be 50 times 12. That'd be $600. So over 50% savings by signing up for the entire year. Hopefully that video helped and kind of gets you started in building on a model. If you got any questions, don't forget to ask. Peace.